This module begins part 3 of the textbook, where the focus is on effective strategies to promote physical activity. A key part of this chapter is to emphasize the Guide to Community Preventive Services, its reason for existence, and its processes for recommendations. The chapter also presents examples of information-based approaches to physical activity promotion. Before we start, we may think of the following questions. Have you ever tried to help someone increase his or her physical activity levels or begin an exercise program by giving information on the health benefits of physical activity? Did it work? How successful were you over the short term and long term? The best resource of translating public health research into practice is the Guide to Community Preventive Services. The Community Guide contains guidance on health improvement strategies for numerous topics, including physical activity. Each recommended strategy in the Community Guide is based on a rigorous review of available scientific evidence. Recommended strategies for health promotion and disease prevention that are found in the Community Guide. The Community Guide is an ever-expanding resource of recommendations on evidence-based interventions to improve public health. Community Guide, and how can you use it to develop effective physical activity interventions? The Guide to Community Preventive Services, or the Community Guide, contains guidance on evidence-based health improvement strategies for numerous topics, including physical activity. Each recommended strategy in the Community Guide is based on a rigorous review of available scientific evidence. Recommended strategies for health promotion and disease prevention that are found in the Community Guide, for example, have been thoroughly reviewed and scientifically tested. Then, we need to understand how the task force determined whether a physical activity intervention is effective. The task force takes into account the types of activities targeted, the breadth of their impact, how programs are delivered, the target population, and the type of setting in which the programs are delivered. The task force also seeks the answers to the following questions about specific physical activity interventions. Does it work? If it does work, how well? For whom does it work? Under what circumstances is it appropriate? What does it cost? Does it provide value? Are there barriers to use? Are there any risks? Are there any unanticipated outcomes? Rationale for informational approaches. We are concerned with these two questions. What are 3 ways informational approaches can increase physical activity? Answers may vary a little but include the following. First, informational approaches to physical activity promotion may change behaviors through several pathways. Second, informational approaches may encourage people to be physically active by extending their knowledge about where and how to be active in their communities. Third, informational strategies may help people identify the personal and environmental reasons they are physically inactive and help them overcome them. Finally, informational approaches can let people know when opportunities for physical activity are happening in their communities, at their work sites, or in other settings. Categories does the task force use to classify physical activity interventions? The task force uses the following categories to classify physical activity interventions: recommended strong or sufficient evidence that the intervention or program is effective. Recommended against strong or sufficient evidence that the intervention or program is not effective or is harmful. Insufficient evidence. The available studies do not provide sufficient evidence to determine whether the intervention is effective. You may consider the below 2 questions. Have you even seen a billboard in your community that urges you to exercise more? Or a late-night TV advertisement or intranet site at your work site or university that reminds you to be physically active? Have you ever received an email reminding you of the health benefits and importance of being physically active? Single stream techniques are combined into multiple intensive strategies targeted toward increasing physical activity. However, they can be successful. One of the recommended strategies for increasing physical activity via informational approaches is a community-wide campaign. These campaigns rely heavily on communication to change behavior through increased knowledge. What are 3 characteristics of a community-wide program that succeeds at increasing physical activity? First, they include many community sectors. That is, they are not limited to messages from the local health department, parks and recreation department, hospital, or mayor's office. Second, community-wide informational campaigns frequently include very visible, broadly targeted strategies. Finally, community-wide informational campaigns can be successful if they are included in other activities that focus on physical activity, related health issues. Can the physical activity levels of an entire state be improved? The answer is yes. The Active Australia serves as an excellent example. What was the Active Australia program, and did it increase physical activity? The graph on the right shows the improvement of New South Wales. For details, you may go the text page 186. Approach is effective at increasing physical activity? Why or why not? The task force found insufficient evidence to recommend mass media strategies for physical activity promotion. However, research evidence has emerged that has led some authors to label the strategy as promising. What was the VERB program, and did it increase physical activity? The VERB campaign was the first U.S. national mass media campaign to promote physical activity. The campaign was developed and implemented by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention (CDC) in 2002. The purpose of the campaign was to increase and maintain physical activity among tweens youth ages 9 to 13 throughout the United States. Although not definitive, the results from VERB are promising in that a large-scale paid media campaign seemed to change physical activity behaviors in some populations. And can be defined as the processes through which people learn about personal health concepts and behaviors. Classroom-based health education programs are usually focused on providing information to help students make rational decisions about adopting healthy behaviors. Then, are classroom-based health education approaches effective at increasing physical activity? Why or why not? The Community Guide has concluded that there is insufficient evidence to determine the effectiveness of classroom-based health education programs. The primary findings showed little evidence of increased student physical activity levels. As with mass media and other informational strategies, health education does seem to increase general health knowledge, knowledge related to physical activity, and even self-efficacy about exercise. Unfortunately, these increases do not translate into behavior changes. What are 4 characteristics of effective health education criteria according to the CDC? Answers may vary but include the following: have clearly defined health goals, and behaviors are linked to those goals. Are based on research, but rooted in theory. Define and describe age-appropriate peer and social norms for health behaviors, and anchor health values and beliefs. Help students understand their own personal risks for certain health behaviors. Teach skills for dealing with social pressures to engage in bad health behaviors. Teach skills that result in self-confidence and competence to engage in desired health behaviors. Provide age-appropriate and culturally appropriate learning strategies, materials, and examples. Provide adequate time for instruction, reinforcement of lessons, and skill, and behavioral practice. Provide opportunities to connect with appropriate role models such as peers, family members, and community leaders. Include support for teachers to enhance their teaching effectiveness. effective was it? Project Graduate Ready for Activity Daily was a study designed to determine the effectiveness of a college health education class in increasing physical activity levels. The main results of Project Grad showed no significant effects on men during the semester-long intervention. Men were more active than women at baseline, and at least in the maintenance stage for physical activity, which may have made increases difficult to achieve. The women in the intervention showed significant increases in physical activity levels during leisure, strengthening, and flexibility exercises. College-based health education seems to improve knowledge but not behavior.